Okay, perfect. All right. Good morning, Kerry. Welcome to Shift Change. Happy you could to join me, and just want to kind of get into a little bit about your hockey life, where you're at today. You're still playing the game. I mean, the premise of my whole platform here is older guys still playing the game, and the fact that we're still doing it out there every week. I'm still playing. I think it's 3 days a week now in Arizona.
That's great.
Um, are you still playing the game?
You know what? I still go out to stick and puck here in Breckenridge. I played a little bit in Scottsdale here. I guess last fall.
Yeah,
I thought, well, you know what? I'm getting older. The bruises
yeah.
don't heal as quickly, and I love to play golf, so I've kind of backed off a little bit on the Arizona thing, so I can get up in the morning, and go play golf, and not worry about a
Yeah,
twisted ankle or something like that. But it's I
right.
still
Yeah, and
obviously follow it.
yeah, and I'm younger than you. I mean, I'm gonna be 58, and it's harder for me,
Yeah,
even at 58, to do it 3 days a week, and then I still try to play golf in between that sometimes, you know what I mean? So,
right.
but, um but yeah, so Kerry, take us back to the beginning. Where did hockey and when did hockey first enter your life?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Saskatchewan, so that was hockey across Canada when I grew up, and I think still is the sport. Um,
Yeah,
and so as a grew up on a farm, and as back as far as I can remember, my dad and my uncle who farmed together. They had always, made a little rink for me, and then, once I got, um, probably to, 8 or 9, they built a bigger rink where we had lights across it, just so I could play at night, and boards, and a little bunkhouse that I could have an airtight
oh,
heater and warm up, and so I spent a ton of time, all by myself. I had 2 sisters, and my uncle, his son wasn't quite old enough then, and so I spent a lot of time just growing up and, playing hockey, you know,
yeah.
from October through, end of April.
Yeah, so the hockey culture in Saskatchewan, it's huge then, like, it is in every Canadian community,
Yeah.
and e so was hockey a big part of that community that you grew up in? What town were you from originally?
In Melfort, and yeah, I
Okay.
mean, it was a big thing. We had at that time a senior hockey team, the junior, and then of course you had all the youth leagues, and then they had a junior B team. We called it junior B, now it'd be called tier 3 junior, I guess. That came
Yes,
it
yeah,
probably started, Rich, in the I want to say in the early 70s, and now they have a tier 2 junior team. But that it was hockey was a big thing,
yeah.
in that community, a community of 5,000 people and their surrounding area. So yeah, hockey was a big deal around there.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think the most famous hockey player from your province is Gordie Howe, eh?
Yeah, he would. Yes, I mean,
Probably the guy,
the
right? I
guy
think.
at that
Yeah,
time, and obviously a ton of players that you know come through there. Like the Clark Gillies and the Brian Trottiers, and a lot of those guys, and obviously the amount of talent that's still being produced out of a province of 1 million people is still pretty incredible.
yeah, it's crazy, and I think that Saskatchewan is even fewer people than Calgary than, Alberta and right? I mean, it's
Yeah,
still there's only a few major cities, right?
yeah, really two major
Yeah,
cities, Saskatoon and Regina, and
yeah.
it's yeah, they seem to crank out the players.
Yeah, it's crazy. So growing up in hockey then through youth hockey and you played some junior hockey as well, I imagine. Did you stay in Saskatchewan for junior hockey?
I did. So I played as a 15-year-old with the junior B team of 15 and 16. People like Kelly McCrimmon. Kelly was there 2 years. He's the GM now of the Golden Knights, and they were
Yes. Yep.
Kelly and Brad were their family with farmers in Rosetown, so a town about 3 hours away. Um, and then I actually played in Prince Albert with the Prince Albert Raiders. So now in the Western League. At that time, they were in the Saskatchewan Junior League. So Terry Simpson was coaching then, and Terry, had a couple stints in the NHL coaching.
Yeah.
Um, Played in Humboldt, got traded to Humboldt, the Humboldt Broncos for a year. And then after that, I went away and, was doing high school in both PA and Humboldt. And once I finished, then I went to Camrose College, which was
Okay.
in Alberta for 1 year. And then I went back and played at University of Saskatchewan for Dave King for 4 years, um,
Okay.
until I was done school. Yeah,
And of course, Humble Broncos became a worldwide, story when they
yeah,
had that bus
that,
crash, eh? That
yeah,
same
yeah.
organization? Okay.
Became known for the wrong reason, but
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
yeah, it
Yep.
was a sad situation. It's good to see, but that's the hockey community, as you know, Rich, rallied
Yep.
around that whole thing and across the world, literally. Um,
Yeah.
and but it was devastating for that community. But having played there a bit and known some people there, they got stronger because of it. And I think
Yeah.
the hockey world has woken up. I remember those bus rides, uh,
Yeah.
across the province. Whereas a quick reminder now with, you know, being involved with the Winterhawks, and we make that trek from Portland all the way out to Brandon. Um, we,
Wow.
because of that, I'll tell you, we take some precautions that, you know, and do some things that probably wouldn't have been done.
Yeah.
So some good has come out of a very tragic situation.
Yeah, no, that's great, and of course, Lindy Ruff, the coach of the Buffalo Sabres, his brother was also killed in a bus crash, years before that. I think the '70s is when that was too, and it's just these kids are driving all over the country in these
Yeah,
buses, and I know when I was in buses and traveling around, I was always scared because I always felt like you didn't have control, eh? Like you
right,
weren't anything can happen, and they're driving in these flat prairie towns, right, with winds blowing over the roads.
right.
It's pretty scary.
Pretty scary. Well, and then, not to dwell on this too long, Rich, but there's, this Fifth Current bus accident with Joe Sakic survived, right? There was,
Yes. Yep.
players that passed in that situation too. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's horrific when
Unfortunate.
it happens, and um,
Yeah.
I wish there was a safer way, but
Yeah. That's
it is what it
how
is.
else do you do it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so hockey did hockey teach you leadership before you even before you got into business? I mean, I own a business and I look at hockey and what I've done over the years, and I put a lot of that into business. Um, did that help you grow and that help you build
Uh,
leadership moving into your career?
Absolutely, Rich. I often tell, um, relate, I'll go back to my business, world. And I used to communicate, that leadership and just being a good teammate, all the things you learn in playing the game is a
Yeah,
microcosm of business. It's just, you take all the same principles. You need
yeah,
a team. Everyone, you can't have everyone superstars. You can't have everyone in business that wants to be the CEO. You got to have people that are operationally sound. You have people that are the thinkers. And you build a team like that. And then leadership, absolutely. I still obviously keep in close contact with Dave King, who is our coach. And as you may know, Dave spends the winters in Scottsdale
yeah,
still because of his connection with the Coyotes. But we often see, in fact, we had dinner with he and his wife and a couple of guys I played with and their wives here a month ago. And I said, Dave, you didn't know it at the time, but you were actually teaching leadership, to all of us that had an opportunity to play for you. What it took to lead, and how do you be a good teammate? How do you win? But how do you do it with a group of individuals and mold them? And I said,
yeah,
you could have taken that, class and took it into the business school and
yeah.
taught it. And so what you're saying is so true.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, after hockey, I went into business as well, and owning a business myself.
Yeah.
Every business needs fourth liners, right? Like
Yeah.
when you look at it as a hockey program,
You bet.
like you said, not everybody can be a CEO, not everybody can be the captain, not everybody can be the first line power play. Everybody's so important in an organization, no matter if you're selling feed or you're
Yep.
selling, water. If somebody has to be a part of everything, and everybody's important. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's pretty incredible. Um, so let's transition over to the Winterhawks, because I guess
Yeah.
that's kind of the coolest part. I know you had a great career, and I know you were with Monsanto for years, but we're want to talk about the Winterhawks. So
Yeah.
why the Winterhawks? How did that opportunity become part? How did that opportunity come together? Like, where
Right.
did that even start?
Yeah. It's it's a bit of a weird story. So, um, obviously, growing up in Western Canada, that playing in the Western Hockey League was something, and I knew the Winterhawks. I had one of the guys I played with, in fact, at college, Tim Lear, his son Taylor, played for the Winterhawks, and went on to get drafted by the Flyers and played with the Flyers, and I was always sort of close. And then the other connection, my roommate in college, Willie Desjardins, who um, is now back in Medicine Hat, the coach and GM of the Taggers, but Willie and Mike Johnston um, worked for Hockey Canada back when they had both you know were done playing hockey themselves and were going to school out there, university, and doing master's degrees, and they were working for Dave King for Hockey Canada, and they became close friends. Mike Johnston ended up, after stints in both LA and Vancouver as assistant coach, he became the coach of the Winterhawks. Coached for 5 years or so, six, and he went on. He was head coach of the Penguins for a couple of years, and then went back to the Winterhawks after he got fired from there. So he and Willie were close. I'd met Mike a couple times, didn't really know him. So I guess Rich would have been the March or April of 2020. So right after COVID started,
Right.
Willie phones me. He and I, stayed connected. And he phones me one day and goes, "Hey, the Winterhawks are for sale. Um, you should really look at them." I said, "Willie, I know you didn't go in the corners very much and you didn't have many concussions, but there's no way I buy
Yeah.
a hockey team." And so we kind of let it drop at that. And then come around to Labor Day, actually, that weekend of 2020, he phones me again. He said, "Hey, you need to really have a look at this because," and what had happened, Rich, with the team, a fellow by the name of Bill Gallagher, a Calgary guy, um, owned the Winterhawks and had owned them since 2008. And he also owned a professional team in Lucerne, Switzerland.
Okay.
And he had placed the two teams as collateral, apparently, against a loan. Anyway, end up, the bank took over the two teams, the private
Oh,
equity
wow.
bank, as
Okay.
collateral. And so they were holding it, and it got to the point they moved the Lucerne team quickly, and the Winterhawks, they wanted to get it moved, and the league, as it should, wanted to make sure it was the right ownership group, um, and there were several ownership groups that went through and looked at the team or talked to the league, and anyway, nothing materialized. And of course, you're in the middle of COVID. We weren't
Yeah.
playing hockey then, and no one really knew whether, when, and if hockey would come back. Uh,
Right, right.
and so, anyway, I agreed. I said, "Oh, let's okay." I said to him, "We'll go out and have a look." And he said, "Hey, you just talk to Mike, and Mike really wants you to at least have a look at it." So I got a few of phoned a couple friends and said, "Hey, would you want to go out and have a look at this?" So we we started doing diligence in October and closed the deal in whatever it was, January 1st of 21, right? But we
Yeah.
still weren't playing hockey, and go, "Okay, that's not a great time to buy a hockey team." And you
Right.
don't know if and when you're gonna
Exactly.
play, but it's turned out
Right.
really, really good.
So was it more of a business decision for you, a passion project, a little of both? I
A
mean,
little
hockey's
both.
a part of your life. Yeah.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
little both. I thought it'd be fun, and you know, I said, well, I know Mike, and part of the condition was, that Mike. I said, hey, you got to be there, as you know, in junior hockey especially. It's so much of the how the organization is run because you got to be able to attract players and develop them and even though you still have the draft or the band draft, or, but running a successful program, you gotta win, and you gotta have the right community involvement to make sure that you're you're part of the community, and so Mike, because of his reputation in the league, but also in the Portland community, made it made he was really the glue that made it happen.
Yeah, that's cool. And it's funny because, do you know Craig Stewart that skates with us down here in Arizona?
No, I believe I know Craig.
Craig owned the Coyotes,
Okay,
and, he similar story, different level of money, I'm
yeah,
guessing, eh? So,
yeah,
but, he said, if looking back, he probably would have enjoyed the journey more, because it was a great thing to own a team, but in the moment, especially owning the Coyotes, there's a lot of financial responsibility, and
yeah.
there's a lot of stress, and there's a lot of, you know, uh, things that went completely sideways for the Coyotes. He got out of it, and it turned out well for him, but I can't imagine what it's like to own a team. I own a business with 20 employees, and some nights I can't can't go to sleep, eh?
Yeah,
So, yeah, it's gotta be tough.
yeah. No, and it's worked out well, obviously with the team and, this is things happen more sometimes, more luck than good management or planning. When we were going through diligence, the Winterhawks, the organization about a year and a half before had, taken over the lease of a practice, one of the 2 practice rinks in Portland, from a Jesuit high school, owned the rink. And so they started to develop, a youth hockey program, figure skating, etc. When we saw that, we kind of went, "Oh my gosh, we don't want that." We want to focus on the hockey team. And but they said, "Well, just deal with it. Take it as part of the purchase." And it's ended up being really successful. In fact,
Yeah,
of course, that's where COVID really helped because people were looking for something to do. Um,
yeah.
we've since taken over another facility. So we run a youth hockey program now, of about 500 to 600 kids, all the way from beginners to through midgets, adult hockey leagues, figure skating. We've got a fellow out there that runs the facilities doing a fabulous job.
Wow.
And so that has been really good for us trying to grow the game in Portland, one, and two, it financially it's been uh, a surprisingly great investment from that standpoint
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
But it fits together because we can, use the Portland brand, the Winterhawk brand, with these youth teams. We believe, and we've talked to the city about the need to grow the game. Um, and so we've, got a lot of cross promotion going on and,
yeah.
keeping, getting the kids involved at an early age and hopefully, growing the interest.
Yeah, exactly. So what responsibility comes with owning such a historic franchise? There's a lot of history in this program. So you come in and it's like, okay, do you make a ton of changes, or you just keep that historic franchise on the same path?
Yeah, we really tried to, keep the history, of the program. Obviously, one of the things that for those of you that have, people that have followed junior hockey, the Winterhawks, um, up until we owned them, wore the Chicago Blackhawk jersey.
Yes.
And there's a great a trivia story there, Rich, in the fact that if you go way back, and I always say this is a great trivia question. What's the first U.S. city to have its name on the Stanley Cup? And the answer is Portland. and
Okay.
it's a result of the Portland Rosebuds played the Montreal Maroons. I'm going to forget the year, but it was
Yeah.
19 whatever. And at that
Had to be
time,
a teen, right? A
yeah,
19,
yeah,
19
it was in the
something, right? Yeah.
teens, and at that time, um, both teams got their name on the Stanley Cup, both cities that were in the
Wow.
final. Montreal Maroons ended up winning, but so that was the start of that, and then the Chicago Blackhawk situation. From there, the Blackhawks were formed right after World War One, and it was a fellow that was um, in World War One, came back and somehow started the Chicago Blackhawks, and he named them the Blackhawks in honor of um, the Blackhawk platoon that he led in World War One, and
Wow, okay.
he did it in honor of a tribe in Illinois. Um, and Chief Blackhawks. So that was kind of the history of how the Chicago Blackhawks. Well, he he got a team, but he didn't have any players, so he ended up buying all the contracts of the Portland Rosebuds,
Oh,
and that
okay. Wow.
formed the initial roster. So then, fast forward to 1976, um, when the Edmonton Oil Kings were moved from Edmonton to Portland, become the Portland Winterhawks,
Okay.
and the owners, were a little short of cash, I understand, and so they had a friend knew somebody with the Blackhawks, the owner, and went to him and said, "Hey, could we borrow some jerseys?" And that is
Mm.
how they started to wear the Blackhawk jersey. So I still got the letter, and when we were going through diligence of that they could wear the Blackhawk jersey and everything that
Wow.
without any royalty or anything back to Blackhawks. So that was a long story to how they wore the Chicago Blackhawk jersey up until we bought them, and then at that time, as we were going through it, we play at the Veterans Memorial Coliseum, which is city-owned rink, and we were, um, quote, encouraged and asked by some of the city council members to not wear the Blackhawk with the Indian
Yeah.
head because of
Yeah.
what was going on at that time. So,
Yeah.
and we said, you know what, we needed our own identity in a way. And so we
Yeah.
actually, the one probably biggest change we made was changing the logo. So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
hired the same folks that helped design the Kraken jersey and came up with the current um, logo that we've got today. But we've tried to keep, as you said, Rich, the history of the franchise. And in fact, just this past season um, was the 50th year of the Winterhawks, and we
Wow.
honored the top 50 players um,
Right. Yep.
of
Yep.
all time with the Winterhawks. As a way,
Wow.
again, of keeping that legacy alive. If you walk
Yep.
into now the Coliseum, um, yeah, we've got the old, a lot of old photos and other things, and um,
Uh,
try to keep that history alive.
yeah, that's awesome. Um, what do you think what would be the biggest thing that would surprise fans about owning a WHL team that they probably don't realize?
Yeah, I think and just being involved. The kids obviously that are playing at this level, they have aspirations to play pro
Yep.
hockey. Many of them, I think, some have realized that may not happen, but certainly the ability to go to college and play at college or go to Europe and play, all
Yeah.
have that
Pro somewhere,
aspiration.
right?
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think they're very much driven, and for the most part, um, you know, really have a motivation and they're disciplined and the other thing that, is this, I'll call it the time management. They're going to school. They're either in high school or in our case, we require the kids to take that are in college age and have graduated from high school. We require them to take two classes, college classes per semester or first half, second half. So
Okay.
I think that's probably one surprising thing is, education in the Western League is important, and we want to make sure that as we think about it, and our philosophy is, the reality is only maybe 10% of these kids will make a living
Yeah.
playing the game. We got to
Yeah.
prepare them as citizens. So I think that's, it's just not the hockey piece for us. Our job number one is to produce good citizens, and
Yeah.
you do
Yeah.
that through what we started this conversation of leadership, being part
Yeah.
of a team, all the things that come along with having a successful life and career. Uh,
Yeah.
we reinforce that on the ice, off the ice, and then the foundation of that is getting a great education. Um,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
so I think that when you tell people that story, they go, "Really? Wow!
Yeah.
Didn't realize that." I thought, they had the impression, these kids don't go to school. All they,
Yeah.
they're all they, So it just, I think that's probably the thing. Being close to these kids, you really appreciate their sincerity, their discipline, and their
Yeah.
drive.
It's not just a hockey factory. You're
No,
not just pumping out
right?
players and not caring about what they do because, I mean, I look like we talked about, through my career, I learned so much that I took into life. And my 2 boys played hockey from the time they could walk till, college, and they're better people because of it, and not
Yeah,
just through coaches that they played for, but the way I brought them up in hockey. They're just different people, hockey players, eh?
yeah,
Like, they're just different. So,
yeah.
um, but moving into developing players, are you focused more on the business side or the player development side?
Yeah, we have Mike Johnson there and Kyle Gustafson now the coach. Mike stepped away from coaching. Uh, I guess this will be the second season where we turned the reins over to Kyle, and but he's still the GM and the president. We leave the hockey stuff to them. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll go out to training camp. He'll phone me and say, "Hey, what do you think?" And but I think they've got they're great hockey people. So we focus to answer your question, Rich, more on the business side.
I
Um,
gotcha. Okay.
so
Yeah.
we do think we're we're trying to obviously improve the fan experience. So we do spend time with the group out there deciding how can we is there investments we can make, or the things we can do to improve the fan experience. So like this past year, the um, city has, completed a 2-year, $50+ million renovation of BMC. So all new seats,
Wow.
repainted the building. We put in, I think, last year we were the only second uh, arena in North America that has the electronic boards where we can do advertising. Um,
Oh, yeah.
so we made that investment. For that. We've, obviously tried to improve the um, facilities for the players. We made an investment into, um, putting building out a VIP lounge in the building. So that's
Yeah.
where we spend the time. Rich is really on those types of things of
Yeah.
where's a good investment? How can we improve the fan experience? Um, how do we make sure that the players have the best, capability to, train and develop? So that's where we spend our time.
Yeah. And it's funny because eh, people think hockey is about winning, and even at mites through bantams or midgets,
Yeah.
everybody wants to win, but where what does the success look like for the Winterhawks beyond wins and championships? Is it more that focus is we want to put out, and you mentioned this, put out fine gentlemen
Right.
with high school degrees that finish high school, that go on to college. I mean, that seems like what the Winterhawks are all
That
about.
that is exactly it. And we measure our success because look, these kids do want to be as best as they can be at the game. And those that have the capability to go on and play pro. I mean, Mike talks about this statistic. I think our average um, is about 3.4 NHL draft picks per year over the history of the team. So you
Yeah.
obviously want to continue to develop the kids from a hockey standpoint as best as you can so they have that opportunity. But we do
Yeah.
that in parallel. We don't think it's either or. In fact, we think they go together. If we can make sure that we are developing the right habits, the right character in the individual, that will aid them in terms of the hockey. I look at a kid like Seth Jarvis, who,
Yeah.
I mean, if you meet that kid, he is just a wonderful, he's a bit of a happy-go-lucky kid, right? But he is a really good kid. And I think some of the characters, and, you talk to the Dundon who owns the Hurricanes, who now, by the way, owns the Portland Trailblazers, but
Yeah.
um, he talks about when he came there as an 18-year-old to camp. We thought we were going to get him back as a 19-year-old,
Yeah. You never
but
saw him again.
you never saw him again. But because
Yeah.
it was his maturity,
Yes.
and you talk to some of the players that have gone on to play. They they give so much credit to that program and those that played in the Mike Johnson era of the discipline that Mike required. He said the best thing for them, and it helped them not only the hockey part of it, but how do you be a leader? How do you all the characters that we talked about in business? Those
Yeah.
things are important to be a successful player. So
Yeah.
that's it sort of goes back to that common theme.
Yeah. So you've owned it going on 6 years now. Have you seen today's athlete change from 6 years ago coming in? At 16
Yeah,
years old, these players are doing things now that are just unbelievable, even at 16 to 18.
yeah. No, it's incredible the talent level. Going out to training camp, of course, we will bring our draftees there, so they're coming there as 15-year-olds. They're not going to make the team, but we bring them to training camp, and the skill level is just off the charts.
Yeah.
You see, so all these kids, have a high level of skill. Obviously, you know, foundationally that's good, but it requires a lot of other stuff to be able to play in the league, their league, and or go beyond it. But that has certainly um, changed. Yeah, every year you're seeing these kids getting faster and more skilled when they're
Yeah.
coming at that age. The other thing that's really changed, and I'd say it's even we've seen it in the last 5 or 6 years, is I'm not sure this is some people listening to the podcast may not want to hear this is the degree that these kids are being influenced by agents
Yeah.
and other ways is I don't think in some cases I think they're really getting good advice. There are some that they're not, and
Yeah.
um, they got to realize that hockey and the development is a journey, and then they're 15 or 16 by the time they're 20. You got to go through ups and downs, and there's this immediacy impact where you know you're not playing the player enough. They got to be on the power play.
Yeah.
Eh, and so you're seeing it happen at the NCAA with these portal changes where
Yeah.
I'm not getting enough ice time, so I'm going to go in the portal and switch. You can't
Yeah.
do that in our league.
It's killing college football.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I would say if there was one thing that isn't, I don't view as a positive thing, is this, you know, um, impact that, these kids are being told they're going to be superstars. And if they're not treated like that, some of them, you know,
Yeah.
if they don't have a good balance and grounding from the parents and, on through their quote advisors,
Right.
that's probably one of the challenges. And I would say for any hockey family, view this as a journey. If
Yeah.
your son um, is good enough, they'll be successful. Trust
And
the process, I would say.
yeah.
And for some, it's very difficult to trust the process. Is that immediacy effect that people want?
Yeah, and if they don't come out of it with a hockey career, they come out of it as a fine gentleman or a fine young woman
Yeah,
that is ready to go and challenge life, and I think that's what's kinda cool, but the talent, the mindset, the work ethic,
yeah,
all 3 of those today is unbelievable with these kids because and I know growing up, I didn't lift weights. I
Right.
just played hockey, and
Yeah.
you see these kids come in today, and they've got tree trunks for
Yeah.
thighs.
Yeah.
The butts on them are
Yeah.
these massive muscular they look like Sidney Crosby,
Yeah.
right? They
Yeah.
all wanna look like Sidney Crosby,
Right.
and I think that's what's changed the most with these kids is even at 15, their muscle is incredible, and they're
Yeah.
still growing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. And then,
It's
the
crazy.
great thing is the tool. I mean, the things, some of the technologies that we're deploying now, monitoring their heart rate on practice during the game, just the stats and the data you can use now. And I think the next wave that we're talking about, Rich, is really individual diet, training, and saying, everyone's an individual, they're going to need something different. So that's what
Right.
we're starting to think about. How do we um, deploy some of this technology that we can further enhance the physical development? And that, if we do that right, then that's going to lead to less injuries and
Yeah.
better performance.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, we talked about Seth Jarvis, and what do you think makes a player mentally ready to make that jump to professional hockey, whether it's Sweden, Finland,
Yeah,
NHL? And when you think of the NHL, the Winterhawks alumni who've reached the NHL, what common traits do you think they share? And I think I know the answer because I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, but
yeah,
guys like Seth Jarvis and I think Seth Jones, right, played
yeah.
for the Winterhawks. So,
We did.
what are
Yeah.
some of those traits you think they share?
I think individuals like you mentioned, and you throw in the Cam Neelys and all, those, some of those that are before. I mean, you see those people now, and whether they're current players or past players, one is that they just have I call it a discipline about them and the way they go about conducting themselves. One,
Yeah,
I think the other thing that you hear, you talk to the NHL folks, is the NHL is a long season, right? And we play what, 68 games. We used to play 72, but it's a long season and consistency. Um, and the players that one of the things that really separates the players that have a long career is being able to be consistent,
yeah,
and uh, not have these ups and downs in terms of really good one game or good for a week and then not good. So
yeah,
that's one. I think how to deal with adversity, because unless you're a Wayne Gretzky or a Sidney Crosby or a Mario Lemieux, you're going to have
yeah,
ups and
yeah,
downs, and it's that ability to deal with when things aren't going so well, um, and
yeah,
they'll keep have a tough, strong mental approach to work through
yeah,
those, and
yeah,
not lose, and not you know focus on keep working hard. Things will turn around. Um,
yes,
and as you know, whether it be in business or otherwise, go back to that analogy, you look for people that are resilient and can deal with adversity. You
yeah,
know, and you go to a game situation, you get behind 2 goals. How do you deal with that, right?
right,
So that's
right,
one. I think the other thing that, and again, Mike Johnson, in today's game, I think two things, and I'll use Seth Jarvis. Um, he can be dynamic offensively, but he's responsible defensively.
yeah,
And in today's game, you got to do both. And those players that really can grasp that and take that, well, one, they'll make it into the league if they have the capability earlier,
yeah,
because so many of the junior kids who come out can't play defensively, and you
yeah,
have to in the NHL now, if
yeah,
or any pro league, or you get eaten up. So
yeah,
I think that'd be another one that's very specific that we kind of stress is, hey, we want you to be dynamic in a fast-paced game. That's the new game now. But in saying that, you still have to be responsibly defensively.
yeah, and I talk a lot about the Buffalo Sabres because 'cause I'm from Buffalo and, I grew up in Buffalo,
Yeah,
and when you mentioned both sides, the big topic in Buffalo right now is Alex Tuck, and
yeah,
that's a kid who he learned to play on the defensive side, and he's probably gonna make $11 million a
Yeah.
year next year somewhere
Right.
because he's learned to play both sides of
Yeah.
the puck, and y you learn that because if you get in the NHL and you can't, you better learn quickly or you're only gonna be around a few
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. You better be
Yeah.
scoring 55 goals.
Yeah, exactly, and your coach is still gonna want some defense out of you
Yeah.
at some point, right?
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
um,
Yeah.
so one of the biggest stories in hockey right now, and we touched on it a second ago, is the NCAA eligibility
Hmm.
rules and opening doors for CHL players. What is it, when you first heard about this NCAA rule change, what was your reaction and what did you think it was going to do to the future of junior hockey?
Yeah. Look, bottom line, I'm going to start with my ultimate conclusion. It's great for hockey.
Okay.
It's great for the kids. It's great for hockey. Um, and I, I applaud it because there's no way a kid at 15 should be having to make a decision where they got it, whether they can play or not. And that's just unfair to the kid. It's unfair to the
Yeah.
family. So opening that up is great. And look, I think the impact to our league, and I know I have some of my fellow governors and so forth, maybe a different view. It's good for our league because um, I'll take our case. We had this year five five kids at training camp, six kids out of Minnesota. We never could pry kids out of Minnesota before
Wow.
because it opened up. So one, you know, if you just look at the numbers, Rich, and I did this analysis a couple years ago, so these are 2 years ago number. So if you look at our draft area, obviously we can draft, kids out of Western Canada, and without going through every state, but let's call it
Yeah.
most of the states west of the Mississippi.
Yeah.
That's our draft zone. If you look at the number of kids in Western Canada from 6 years old through 17 or 18, I forget what I used, registered with Hockey Canada, and then do the same with USA Hockey registrations. Um, the, it was like 120,000 in Western Canada. It was 2 years ago. It was like 110,000 in the U.S. So really close, right?
Yeah.
And the U.S. was growing at 5% a year.
Wow.
Western Canada kind of stagnated, and so it was clear we got to for our league to be successful. Um, we got to have more of the U.S. kids having an opportunity to play. And, I think we were averaging about 3.5 U.S. kids um, per year. But, so you just look at the numbers and go, hey, that's not going to be sufficient. I think some of the rest of the teams in our league weren't even that high. So my point is this we got to be able to attract. So that was really good. I think, Rich, our talent level at 16 and 17 is going to increase. We
Yeah.
may lose some kids, so Gavin McKenna. So I talked to
Right.
Willie, who had Gavin for 2 years. Right, he lost him to Penn State,
The
but
number one star in the WHL, right? The guy that puts
yeah,
basically butts in the seats, right?
yeah. So
Yeah.
and but if we can have those kids at 16, 17, maybe if they go on to it, so be it. I look at it as it's a development opportunity. Go for some kids, going to the NCAA is maybe the right move when they're 19. Um,
Ah,
Other kids aren't going to be physically ready, and
right.
I think that's where the honesty and good advice from advisors comes in. So as we talk to the NHL teams, we had a couple kids that were playing at Denver, and they weren't getting ice time, um, and they came back, played for us, and now they got drafted, and they went, "Wow, the best thing could happen." So what I would like to see, versus a adversarial relationship, there should be more of a cooperation. I think, Rich, the leagues that are going to have it a little bit challenging, frankly, are the USHL,
Yeah.
because that was the one area that both, frankly, Canadian kids as well as US kids, that was their route, right? So they could protect their ability to go play the NCAA.
And they were
And then if
strong
you go
before this, right?
right, and then the
Yeah.
Saskatchewan Junior League, the BC Junior League, I've heard same thing. They were, that they're gonna be challenged a bit because, the top players why not go play against, NHL draft picks in the somewhere in the Canadian Hockey League?
Yeah.
Um, so, but overall, um, more opportunity, more flexibility for the kids, and I ultimately think, um, this is a great thing. The one thing I hope that there's um, that it doesn't become an adversarial, pitting one league against another. That's not good for. I don't think that's good for the game.
Yeah. Yeah. And just so people know too, like, growing up in the East for me, as a young guy, everybody said, "Well, you had to go to the OHL." That was the only
Yeah,
way to do it, because
right.
but if you went to the OHL, you couldn't play college hockey. You
Yeah,
basically said you burn that eligibility. So, I think for people that are listening, this rule basically now says that they can go and play in Canada, they can play in the WHL, the OHL, they
mm,
can play in any league and still go to
yeah,
college without losing eligibility, eh?
yeah. That's exactly right. And
Yeah,
the ones I use that every kid, it doesn't, are unique. So one route may be better than the other, depending on the kid. And I'll look at the two Kachuk brothers. So, I coach Brady in St. Louis there because my young guy is same age, and he went the college route. You know,
okay.
um, went to the U.S. development program and then went to Boston. Matthew, um, on the flip side, he went to play for the Hunters in London, with the
Right.
London Knights, and both both are pretty successful. So,
Yeah,
and if you talk to Big Walt, he goes, "Look, Matthew wasn't cut out to go to school and play." For him, it was better just to go and focus on the hockey thing. Um,
yeah,
and so I I really think that this just doesn't create choice. It doesn't force a choice. And now you're
yeah.
seeing some of these kids go to college for a year, maybe it's not quite right. They can come back to the play or
Right.
play for us and then go on. And so
Yeah.
I really like the flexibility this is provided.
And do you think the rule would it have even been blown out of proportion if Gavin McKenna didn't do what he did? Like, obviously, it was blown out of proportion because he's the top choice. So everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, he's Gavin McKenna's leaving." It was the name that made the story big, eh?
Yeah, yeah. It was. There is just a lot of concern that we're gonna the Canadian Hockey League is gonna lose players. And look, they are gonna lose some players, but I look at it and say, you know what? There's only whatever there's now 63 NCAA teams or 62. There's
Yeah.
only so
Yeah.
many spots. You got to
Yep.
finish high school, and there's more kids, so things will balance out here in the long run. There's
Yeah.
going to be a little bit
Yeah.
of churn, and I think what people will come to realize for some kids going to college if they're good enough to play top top six, if they get in top 6 minute forward or top four defenseman minutes, and they're strong enough physically, then it's the right decision. Like the
Yeah. Yeah.
um, um, what the kid that went to the Flyers from Michigan this year,
Oh,
um,
the one that had the really good playoff series.
Martone, yeah, yeah.
Martone. Yeah. Yeah.
So for him, that was a good decision. He went to played college last year. He was physically ready for it.
Yes.
Um, and had a good year, and then that propelled him. For other
Yeah.
kids, that weren't physically ready, probably staying another year in junior. So I think that's where the true objectivity needs to come in from the advisors, right? As to what is the best route versus saying it's all college or it's all junior hockey. Really
Yeah.
look at the kid and say what's their situation, what's the maturity, what do they need next. Um,
Yeah. 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 It's one of those things. It's like, hockey players, the good ones are going to go where they're going to go,
yeah,
and you just let them go, and you just build the team that you have, and you make it as competitive as possible. And
right,
the fans in Portland are still going to come watch, no matter.
absolutely,
They love hockey. So,
yeah.
um, so 5 years from now, how different could the hockey development landscape look because of this decision?
If I was to do a crystal ball in, I think you're going to see things settle down in terms of people realizing that, hey, there's a development, there's a path here. I do think in some ways, this is good for our league because it's forcing us to look in the mirror, Rich, and say, what is it that we could be doing better that the college teams are doing? So, a couple that come to my mind right now that we're going to have to figure out how to do as a league. The realization is that the college guys are playing what, a 35, 36, 38 game schedule. We're playing
Yeah.
68. We're doing a bunch of traveling. During the is is the weight training, um, the diet, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to have to step our game up there,
Yeah.
because the facilities and the capabilities that these college D1, especially the big D1 programs have are incredible. They're pro
The
level.
money, right? Yeah, the
Yeah.
money is
So
incredible, yeah.
I think that's you're going to see our teams have to step up a little bit in our league to even enhance further beyond what we're doing already. Um,
Yeah,
but I think you're going to see, if I was to project, I think you're going to see some alliances. You're going to see, um, hopefully some um, conversations happening with certain, schools of saying, look, we we've identified this kid at 15 or 16. We want to, we're going to try to recruit him, but we're going to advise they go to, a certain team that can help develop them,
yeah,
as a 16 and 17-year-old, to let them play as competitive as they can. Because we know they're going to get great development, good coaching,
yeah,
education. They're going to come
yeah,
in with their education, already underway, so they can fit seamlessly not only into the hockey program, but into the college atmosphere.
yeah,
So those,
exactly.
I think that's what you're going to see in the next 5 years. Uh,
Yeah,
I really do. It's again to me just is really positive for the game and positive for the kids.
and if the kid's committing to a college and he wants to go and you can get him for 2 years before he goes to college, that's a win for both.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
I
that's
believe
awesome.
that. I think you summarized it very well.
Yeah, so the next thing I wanna talk about, and that was a great topic because I think it's such a huge conversation piece in junior hockey and what youth hockey is doing now, but so the whole Hawkeytown, Portland to the pros,
Mhm.
um, they just released this it's super cool and it really dives deep into what the Winterhawks are about. What was your involvement in the project, if any?
Yeah, it's kind of laying it out, and and my, the Mike Kramer, who's the majority owner of the team, he was a driver really behind it, in getting it going. We wanted a way to say not only obviously to help the Winterhawks and improve the brand, but we we actually talked to the league about Western, but this is a great to show what goes on. Kind of like we talked about earlier about the
Yeah,
importance of education and these kids and their discipline, what kind of kids they are, and sort of get in behind the scene and really see the over the course of a season or beyond what it feels like. And so that was kind of we kind of laid it out. We said, look, we want this to be real. We don't want to sort of we didn't want to exaggerate or hide anything. We wanted to
yeah,
be open, but we wanted to be about more than just about hockey.
yeah,
We wanted it to illustrate the life of these kids and everything about them. And there's 3 or 4 of the kids that are, real characters, so they emerged as, taking more of a leading role, I guess,
yeah, yeah,
that the producers said, "Oh, this kid, is really dynamic," but we wanted to really make sure that it was both included the hockey piece and the everything that went through, but also the everyday life, kind of thing. So
yeah.
that's how it that was kind of our involvement, I guess, in terms of trying to make sure that what came out at the end product sort of amplified and illustrated both pieces of it.
Yeah, and it was neat to see the culture and what you guys are doing and the history behind everything. But what makes it so unique? Is it that focus on building fine men and kids that are gonna grow up and be part of society and be successful parts of society. Is that the culture that you guys are trying to build?
That is what we're trying to build, and hopefully, I think everyone's going to look at all the, if you look at the documentaries, right, and everyone takes away a different view. Whether the what is the golf one that came out a few years ago, or the race car,
Yeah,
So it'll be interesting to hear the reaction, Rich. I mean, we kept at, we're asking um, for kind of a report out of, what's the audience, what are they taking away?
yeah,
Personally, I wanted I want them to take away that piece of it
yeah,
is, what it really means to, um, you know, for these kids, and what are we trying to do to develop them, and really, show them as good young men developing.
yeah,
Are they going to make some mistakes and do some things? Yeah, but it's part of their developing them as good young men, turning them into great citizens. That's what I would like to, at
yeah,
least part of the message comes through to the audience that watches
yeah.
this.
Yeah, because growing up, we know a lot of guys that went off to play hockey and never finished high school.
Right.
And that was kind of the norm. That was accepted. You went to play for a
Yes.
junior team in Canada and you basically hung out during the day, you practiced and you played hockey, but you didn't really go to school. And
Yeah.
the thing that was most unique about that Portland to the Pros documentary is the focus on education. And I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah. Well, I found myself sort of reflecting, and I was in my last year of junior hockey. I was in Humboldt, and I had graduated from high school, but that winter I didn't do anything. I did exactly what you said. I was 18. I went, I'm not going to make the pro. I got to get to school. I
Yeah.
mean, if I was out for one more year, I went. It would have been tough to go on to college. So I think of that, and how many of my friends that I played with, ended up just not going to school for 2 years, and they had a really hard time, Rich, getting back into it.
Yeah.
And
You wouldn't be where you are today if you
right.
didn't say to yourself, I got to get
Yeah.
back in school, right?
Exactly. So that
Yeah.
to me, you sort of, for me, that molded my philosophy. And you, I kind of I did not do a good job of answering that question. Where we want to see this our program. I mean, I really would like to see our program be viewed as much from a almost like a true college program, where great hockey development, but we are really providing an educational foundation and a community involvement, just so we can teach leadership and things
Yeah.
that, again, if they go on to play, they're going to use those skills. If they
Yeah.
don't go on to play, we've set them up to be successful. So that's our goal.
It sounds like you guys walk a fine line between winning and culture. And you're at a level where winning is probably first and foremost, right? I would say.
Yeah, I mean, we want to win. We want to be competitive. And here's what we said. There's some teams, and it's for them, and maybe the right decision. But we're bringing these kids in at 18. We're sitting down with their families and saying, "We're going to look after your son. We're going to. Here's the education program. Here's the billet. Um, here's the hockey program." And I the thing that it happens in the Canadian Hockey League, and happens in the other junior leagues in the US too, is you trade these players.
Yeah.
When they're 16, 17. I mean, they've got so much going on, and you're trading them to another team, so they got to uproot their education, uproot their, and I went, so we've taken the approach, and this was again led by Mike Johnson. We we trade players? Yes, but we it has to be a situation, Rich, where one, the player's asking for it. If he's, you know,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
or it's just not working out, or maybe once they get to be 19 and they're done school. But we make it a philosophy as, once we draft you and we sign you, we're going to do everything we can to. You're going to be part of this program. and unless it's your choice to want to get out. And that's not everyone in our league does that. And,
Yeah.
you know, so you see teams every year. So this right now, right, the Memorial Cup's happening in Kelowna.
Yeah.
And, you know, the teams that load up to try to go after wins, so they make a bunch of and make a bunch of trades. And that's not our philosophy. We said, look, we want to be competitive every year. Um, Competitive being we want to be in the top five in the league,
Yeah.
but not going to mortgage the future for 3 or 4 or 5 years and try to go for it. We want to be
Yeah.
competitive every year. Gives a great product for our fans. Again, our focus on development. If we, are good enough, we'll take a run at it. But that's kind
Right.
of our philosophy.
Right, exactly, and you and I both know trades don't work 90% of the time or
Right.
even higher,
Right.
and, I had Grant Ledgerd on, one of my
Mm.
episodes, and Grant talked about, being traded as an 18 or 19-year-old kid from New York to LA. He said he cried for a month,
Yeah.
and it set his development back. He felt like years.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine for a 16-year-old to be traded
Right.
and have to deal with the emotions and the change is crazy, so,
Yeah.
um what, what role do former players play in maintaining that culture? Do you bring them back? Is that they still get involved?
Yeah, we do. We've got, some of the former players, that are involved in, the live in Portland. Sven Barkey is coaching now. He played in Calgary and played a good pro career. He's back as a coach now. We have them come back. We have a golf tournament at the start of training camp every year, so a lot of them come back for that. This year,
That's
with
great.
our 50th anniversary, we um, brought obviously those back that could come back and, to be involved. I do think, Rich, that's one thing that when we came and took over the program, that was one thing that was a little bit absent for us. We realized that it's kind of been an ad hoc approach to involving past players. So we've got an effort underway to do a, a reach out um, and
Yeah,
in a more disciplined, deliberate fashion to get former players involved. And they've been thrilled when we've reached out. So one of the
yeah,
things we started is especially as you go into Western Canada for our, the road trips there, we started to host events this year. So whether it be in
okay,
Calgary, Saskatoon, Edmonton, of alumni, because there's a lot of alumni spread
yeah,
out across you know, um, especially Western Canada, um,
yeah,
that are living in these towns where we go to play. So we're doing some things like that, trying to host some alumni events back in Portland once a year, twice a year,
that's good.
to reach out and again, it's not to ask for anything, but just to say, hey, we'd like to.
Yeah,
Like to have your involvement.
yeah,
We do a neat thing at training camp every year. We have 4 teams. We divide the kids into 4 teams, and we name each team after one of the former players. And then
gotcha,
they
yeah,
do a video of, if they can't be there in person for a short period of time, to say, talk to the kids and so forth. So again, it's a way of involving the
yeah,
past and
yeah,
making the kids realize that there's been a lot of legacy and culture
yeah.
built by the people that came before them.
Yeah, and having these players, these NHL guys come back and wanting to come back says a lot about the culture. They wouldn't come back if they didn't enjoy their time
Right.
or didn't wanna be there. So, when you look at Portland, like, one of the first things I did when we moved over to Portland part-time here or whatever we are
Yeah.
doing in Portland, my first thing was, "Where are some rinks? Do I wanna play hockey in Portland? And do I wanna have 2 sets of hockey equipment?" And
Yeah.
that was a whole other story because I don't know if I
Yeah.
could do that, but I see that there is a youth community in Portland, and I feel like Portland and Arizona, Phoenix particularly, are
Yeah.
very similar in hockey cultures, and, my wife and I tried we were gonna go to a game in Portland, and for me, I like to have an end seat, I like to sit in the
Yeah.
bowl, or I try to find a VIP experience, but I couldn't find a seat in the lower bowl. It was pretty much sold out in Portland. I thought, "What the heck is going on here?" Like,
Yeah.
it's junior hockey. Like, how popular could it be? So we're excited to go see it. But do you see a similarity between the Arizona market and the Phoenix market versus Portland? I mean, you're playing hockey in Arizona. I see Arizona's youth community is huge.
Yeah. I think, Rich, my assessment is, the Coyotes being there for the period they were really,
Yeah,
I think, and knowing a couple of folks that were involved in the junior Coyotes and talking to Bill Armstrong, um, the GM there, and um, they attempted to really do some things, to get the visibility in the local community, which helped youth hockey. And I think in the case of Portland, we don't have a pro team. It's us. It's the Winterhawks. So that's the model that we have tried to emulate a little bit, and really to get the game exciting. And so we've talked to the NHL, and the NHL has a development fund of doing some things, and it didn't materialize, but they've done a good job of in different cities to put in roller, rinks, and
yeah,
get kids playing outdoors on roller hockey. Or there's this synthetic ice that has been developed in Europe that they're piloting. So that's some of the things we'd like to do, just to again have people experience the game. And as you know, and anybody that's played, once you get hooked and get involved, it's fun. The other thing we got to figure out, something, Rich, and I wish somebody, maybe some of your listeners have an answer, is how do you make this darn game more affordable? Um, because it is one of the barriers, of how do you make the game affordable. So I think that as I talk to folks in the Phoenix area, that's still one of the challenges, and I
yeah,
know it's one of the challenges um, there. So we
yeah,
that is so. Back to your question, is the similarity? I think there are some similarities. It's not the first game you think of, whether you're in, but I do think there's a grassroots that
yeah,
we can build on. And I do think if they come to the games and they see the excitement, and again, we're trying to use our kids out in the community, our players, to have a role model and somebody that especially the younger kids can aspire to. Same
yeah.
way the Coyotes did it when, the Shane Doans and all the great players that played there. That's the thing we're trying to do. I'll tell you, the other city that I think has just done a fabulous job is Dallas. Growing
Oh,
that
yeah,
Dallas community and what they've done with their facilities build out, the recognition of the Dallas Stars around that community. I mean, my guys were young guys playing AAA, so our Dallas was in our league, so we were down there a fair amount, and it was just astounding how great a job they did.
yeah.
Um, they did, and then the same thing happened in St. Louis. Um, with the Blues.
So
On a
how old are your guys? You're
Yeah, so this is hockey dad, and 90, a 98, uh, a 95, and a 93. Yeah,
okay, because I have 97, two 97s,
yeah,
and it's funny because we went to go play the, might have been the Bauer Classic in Chicago one
yeah,
year. We were playing AAA out of
yeah,
Hamburg, New York, and our team opened this tournament against the St. Louis Junior Blues,
mhm,
and I think at the time it had, I think we look back on it, maybe 10 or 12 NHL players on it, and they were only, I think they were maybe 13 at the time, and I think Brady and Matthew were on the team, and my son's team scored in the first 30 seconds, and we thought, "Okay, we're doing great." We lost the game 12-1,
yeah,
um, and my one son was in goal, he got pulled, and my other son was a defenseman, and, so we got to see Brady and Matthew and, the kid, what's the kid that plays in Utah now that played for,
Clayton Keller.
Arizona? Clayton Keller. We got to see all those kids, and I don't know,
Mm,
they were all 98s and 97s playing on that team, but
yeah,
you could see at 13 years old, these kids were just different.
yeah. Well, and
Yeah,
I give credit. I end up coaching a lot of those kids. Clayton went to Shattuck the year ahead, but he beat us in the national finals in Pittsburgh. But I had Logan Brown,
Yeah.
and well, Joseph Wool, who's now
Yeah.
in Toronto, and a lot of all those kids that went in that first round. Um, but I credit because of people like Al McInnes was
Yeah.
there, and Jeff Brown and Kelly Chase, and all these guys that stayed around and built the game. And that's the thing that you know, um, the level of youth coaching in St. Louis was incredible, and that's what those kids came out of there because of all the development.
Yeah.
The thing in Portland, obviously, we don't have that, but there are a lot of ex-Winterhawks that are living there and
Yeah.
now getting involved in coaching. So,
Awesome.
some of them are coaching in our program. Obviously, Phoenix. Um, you think
Same
of,
thing.
same thing of, a lot of those players staying around there
Yeah.
and coaching. So, that's the thing we're trying to create is those alumni that are in, Portland that stay around. We're trying to,
Yeah.
get them involved at the youth level.
Yeah, the Buffalo Junior Sabres did the same thing.
Same thing.
That organization's littered with former Sabres and their
Yes.
kids, and now they're in an elite program. They're in that tier 1 elite, and,
Yeah.
they've grown it, and they've done it in Anaheim, they've done it in LA, they've done it in
Yeah.
San Jose, and it's all NHL guys that have gone back and given back, and that's
Yeah.
awesome.
They're doing it in
Yeah, so
Columbus now
yeah,
as well.
yeah,
So,
so but you own an NHL franchise, you've had tremendous business success, and you're still out skating. Why do hockey players truly never leave this game? I mean, I know why I don't, but
yeah.
why do you think we never leave the game?
I don't know. It's a great question. It's just one of those sports that, you don't think of hockey as a lifetime sport, but
Yeah.
I always tell the story of, and just sort of answers your question, I think is it's, it's the level of competitiveness. It's the ability just to get out and get some exercise, and it's the camaraderie I think that
Yeah.
exists. And so Lauren Henning, who, 4 Stanley Cup rings with the Islanders, is my
Yes.
hometown. So his dad and my dad were best friends, and Lauren and I have talked. His dad was still playing when he was 90 years old in Melfort.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So at his 90th birthday, Bob has passed since, but Lauren and I were laughing about this the other day. Lauren, by the way, is another guy you should get on your pod. He's there in Scottsdale, lives there,
Okay. All right.
and we were thinking about this the other day. Is that at his 90th birthday, he asked Lauren, or Lauren asked him, "What do you want for your birthday?" He wanted a new pair of skates.
Oh,
He
wow.
so he was 90 years old asking for a new pair of skates, and what do you want? And at the birthday party, he had to go out and they had to have a little game. It was
Wow,
just
that's
what,
phenomenal.
yeah, it's a great
Phenomenal.
story, a testament to why we play this or keep playing this game.
Yeah, phenomenal. Yeah, and then well, at 58, I still have to ask my wife for a new pair of skates,
Yeah,
so, I'll still be asking at 90, I
yeah,
hope, as
yeah,
well, so but, what keeps your passion for hockey alive all these years? Like, is it just that you just I know you've given back in
yeah,
so many different ways.
yeah. It's just I think it's the game, and it's getting
Yeah,
it's more exciting. I mean, just to watch it now,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
It before, let's face it, for a while there, watching an NHL regular season game 15, 20 years was you had to have a reason to watch it. Now,
yeah,
you can go to these games and just the skill level to
yeah,
watch, and
yeah,
I just it's very entertaining. And in my
yeah,
view, now that maybe moving away from St. Louis and getting away from the Cardinals, baseball's kind of faded in my, you know, I
yeah,
watch a ton of baseball, but you go to turn on a hockey game and just now, and obviously the 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 cameras and all that kind of stuff is much improved, so
change it.
you feel
Yeah,
the game better. But certainly being it live is exciting just to watch the speed and
yeah,
the skill level of these guys is incredible. And I
yeah,
think just the game, you know, um, has sped up. So it's a quick
yeah,
game now, not
yeah,
long between whistles, and not a lot of other stuff going on after the whistle, which is, I think, improved the game too. There's still going to be the
Yeah.
physical component,
Yep.
and that's part of the game, but it's
Yeah.
it's at a I'll call it an appropriate level right now for the most
Yeah.
part.
It's funny because ESPN Classic shows all these old games, and I went and watched the 1975 Buffalo Sabres Philadelphia Flyer Stanley Cup game, the one that the Flyers won the cup in
Yep.
Buffalo. It was our
Hmm.
last greatest chance. It was so bad. It
Yeah.
was slapping the puck around. The passes were terrible. They weren't connecting. Guys were slow. And I thought, wow, that's the hockey I watched as a kid. I
Right.
thought that was the greatest thing ever. When you see it today,
Oh,
what these people do on the
yeah.
ice is absolutely astounding.
Yeah. No, it is. It's and that, you if you and I were, 25 years younger, to be able to use the equipment and have all the stuff that these kids have and be able to use it, often, I guess that's part of what you say. Well, maybe I can have that fountain of youth somehow.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, but, Carrie, I won't keep you any longer,
All
buddy.
right.
I appreciate and I have fully enjoyed this conversation. We are gonna get out to a Winterhawk game next season. We're looking forward to it. We talked about even buying season tickets, and now that, I know the Reesers don't sponsor anything there, I'm gonna have to get my wife involved and,
Right.
make some, have them make some calls over there because Reeser's name is on everything in Portland.
Right.
So, but yeah, so I appreciate it. Hopefully I see you next year, next winter down here in
Yep.
Arizona,
You bet.
but, enjoy your summer and, we'll talk soon.
Appreciate it, Rich. Thanks. Thanks for
All right.
everything you're doing. All right.
Yeah. Have a good day. Thank
You
you.
too. Bye bye.
Bye.